Well, I had lost my phone for like a day or whatever, which is honestly like another story. So I guess now I can just make a collage video, which I haven't made in like a little while, of everything that nobody wants to hear. So I just saw this first post I'm gonna put in. I'm not sure if this is the same girl that was kicked out. Because, like, there was a girl who was talking about how she was 16 and kicked out and turned 17 next year. And then there was the girl that a lady had told me about that was her neighbor that got kicked out and was 16. And I think her other siblings got kicked out too. And then I remember that whole situation. She got kicked out, like, before the winter stuff really got bad. Although I know that sometimes with some of these people, they end up having to, like, couch surf with, like, boyfriends. Of course the chomos, but I don't even mean them. I mean like boyfriends, other people. But people really don't want to get involved and people really don't care anyways. And like I said, one of the funny things about it is that like when you're in the abuse situation, it's like it just is what it is and people don't care. And then when you save yourself, then people have something to say about that too. Because then that's when you get like what I have just been calling quote unquote bum status. And so then people talk junk about you for that. But anywho, this is honestly really eerie to say the least. But one of the things that I can say about this is that the video thing, that's definitely how that goes. Like, a lot of people are made to feel like there's actually help out there and that if you just record what's happening because people quote unquote supposedly don't believe you, even though people know what's going on, everybody knows. I mean, crap, in apartment complexes people can hear it. And I mean, I even remember stories of things like kids being forced to strip down and stay outside in the snow and below freezing weather for hours and 24 hours and stuff like that, and nobody cares and neighbors don't care. But anywho, you're told that you just have to gather enough evidence and do this and do that, and then if you do what you're quote unquote supposed to do, you'll get help. And unfortunately, even once you save yourself and you run away, or maybe you get kicked out, or you were just a foster kid and never had anywhere to go in the first place, once you're out here and you're visibly homeless, then people pretty much keep the same narratives. If people aren't doing the whole you're grown and you should have been figured stuff out or got a house or something, if people aren't playing that game and they're not doing the whole just go home game, you're still going to constantly have people telling you that you need help and you just don't want help and all that stuff. And that's pretty much how it keeps going, and people keep playing those games because people don't really care. But anywho, going back to the whole video thing, as I always say, as someone that's known as the kid who had 1,950 plus videos of abuse evidence and couldn't get any help, I know that game all too well. And I'll always tell people what you really have to focus on is figuring out some way to back away slowly and quietly and get out. There really is no other option. But the unfortunate thing is that the way it typically goes is that most people become homeless as a kid, they get stuck. But that's not even really the bad thing. As I've been saying a lot recently, I feel like one of the worst things about it is that you spend your whole life getting abused and stuff and trafficked or whatever your situation is, and then you spend like your whole life having maladaptive daydreams about escaping and running away from your abuse just to get out here and then go through more abuse. Um, Not as bad as like your previous situation, hopefully, but you continue to go through it because unfortunately now you have bum status and now you have to deal with poor treatment or maltreatment from random people about how they view your situation as their idea of rock bottom, even though this is the best and safest and most peaceful your life has ever been. And it's more so a transitional period, hopefully, and that depends on if you can even manage to get out or, well, get into a better situation. Especially after like laying low till 18 or whatever in the world. And anywho, to go on an irrelevant, somewhat side rant, I remember a couple months back I came across some boy's videos, and he was saying he was documenting abuse for court. I had went ahead and let him know, been there, done that, and pretty much the only person you can really save in that situation is yourself. Your mom is an enabler, and she's probably not going to leave the abuse for her different reasons and excuses, and you're just going to have to run away. The best bet is to go ahead and just stop recording those videos and start planning how you're going to get out. I didn't say it like that, though. I tried to make it sound as nice as possible, but I'm often told that I'm rude, but I'm honestly just being honest. And I think that realistically, I mean, you don't have to be crazy to people when you're talking to them, but after you have a certain amount of like experiences and realities and accept certain truths about the world, you kind of stop getting all like sugarcoaty, and you just tell people the truth, especially how you would have wanted someone to tell you, or how you do want someone to tell you. Like, for example, as people say, real hate is better than fake love. And honestly, I would rather for somebody to look me in the face and say that they don't give a crap about me than to like play games. But I feel like especially in these types of situations and abuse situations, people really need to hear the truth, or really in any bad situation, because especially when it comes to like in America, because there's all of the greatest country in the world stuff, there's a lot of people that are constantly pushing these ideas that there's all this help that there isn't, or even like why one of the reasons why it's been easy for people to get purposely pit against immigrants, because for one, a lot of them come over here and they just have this like, I mean, this could be its own video really, which I kind of have talked about this before in a couple, but to summarize, they really just have this like idea about America, and then also due to colonization and self-hatred, they have this like wannabe white adjacent, wannabe model citizen type stuff going on, and they treat street kids, homeless people, and of course quote unquote black people, because they already are like fed a lot of stuff about, well, pretty much already like told don't listen to them. They just have a victim complex. They're just complaining. Americans are just lazy and they don't know how good they have it. And I mean, some of those things I could get, but generally it's easy for a lot of people to get pit against them because they're fed this like lie about how America is and how the West is. And they come over here and they like, especially in the West Coast, they get into these programs and stuff, and they get housing, especially because many of them have actual decent family systems, and they already have a goal in mind of what they're coming here for. And so they just like see people who are in bad situations as just not wanting help. Like, for example, the immigrants that'll say things like they kind of the same thing that like a lot of Americans say, that homeless youth doesn't exist, or if they see a homeless kid or homeless person in general, there's help out there somewhere over the rainbow that they just don't want. And my point of saying all this is that it's always scary, and like I feel like probably a lot of people who do end up like escaping their abuse situations probably end up with a lot of survivor's guilt. Like, it's scary to know that while you may still somewhat want like parents if they're actually safe, you know that generally it's not safe, and older people aren't safe, and people having control and power over you also is never safe. And you also know that it's just not fair, like while you've run away, there's still people going through the same and similar and so much worse things than you have. Then there's also the fact that like, well, you get out of your first abuse situation, it's not even an end-all be-all once you do escape, because it's kind of like, okay, now what? Because I feel like also one of the scary things about it is that people need to be able to escape. They need to have rights to leave abuse, but put the whole now you're treated like crap because you're quote-unquote homeless and you're quote unquote poor to the side, that weird stuff. It's just like you still are at risk. You're more safe and at peace, and you have more freedom than you ever did in your previous abuse situation. But there's still a lot of other risks because you're still vulnerable, and then you're still like the abandoned, neglected kid who's alone in the world and still trying to figure things out on your own. But that doesn't really mean much because most people raise themselves anyways, and kids are raising each other whether they're living indoors or not. So that doesn't really matter much or mean much. But it's just like you're visibly like out in the open, but it's still kind of whatever. But I think that like the main point is that it's like you can take the steps to save yourself, but the scary thing about it is that there's still the cycles of life and things still really typically don't really get better. Love really isn't real. Most people go to the grave never knowing what love is and all those things, and it's like, I mean, that's how people end up becoming the way they are anyways. It's like it's all a cycle of just people not caring about each other. In fact, well, nah, that'd have to be in another video, but yeah, the whole situation is just like really, really horrible. And then with the stuff going on, like I can only wonder, is she pregnant by the mom's boyfriend? Because I wouldn't be surprised. And then the mom's boyfriend is 26, and then the girl is 16, and it's like, well, crap, how old is the mom? And that even makes me think back to like that situation I mentioned in my video. Let me help you, lunatics aren't. No, I don't even know if it was that one. I know I mentioned this a couple times on the evidence channels, but I know I mentioned it here. But maybe it was something like, "Let me help you, lunatics aren't really in the position to help people." But I don't know. I'll look for it. I may not find it, but pretty much to get to the point, it makes me think back to this whole situation, which is really, really common with choma women, where this lady was dating some young boy who was bullying her kids and was beating on her kids, and so they were homeless or something, and they were staying with my grandma's friend that she met at church, and he was trying to be nice, quote unquote. But the thing is, one, abuse is so normalized to where people don't even care to acknowledge abuse as abuse, and people don't care to acknowledge these kids as traumatized. These were just the quote unquote bad baby's kids that were stabbing holes in his walls, even though their mom was literally dating some kid that was beating on her kids and bullying them. When they would get off the school bus, him and his friends would like go spray them down with water guns and fight them and curse them out, and they were doing all types of stuff. The whole situation was just really stupid, to be honest. And people don't even talk about it because it's actually really common for young boys to either end up, pretty much when they don't have anybody, they go look for role models and guys who are sex preds and essay them and teach them to become sexual predators themselves, and or on hardcore substances. Or they go get with choma women. I got distracted by what I think is an owl flying by, but anywho. I'm trying to think about what else to say with that. Okay, so I had to stop to do something. I don't even remember the last thing I was saying. But it's all just really scary. And I'm trying to think. They didn't have comments on, or maybe the mods had turned them off. So I couldn't really leave a comment. But I think that one of the things that people don't want to admit is that the scariest things, that the only real advice anybody could give is figuring out how to somehow run away. And this also goes into why I say there should be more harm reduction. Well, not more, there should be actual harm reduction. It even makes me think back to a comment that somebody had left that everybody flipped out about in the whole Billy from Soft White Underbelly situation, where somebody had left a comment and they were like, "You mean to tell me in a place like America there's nowhere for a kid like this to go for help?" And then of course people just said, he has places to go, he just wants to be a bum and all that different stuff. And then the person responded, which I'm pretty sure I have a short about this in my whole playlist about the whole situation, titled homeless kid gets overtaken by racist chomos or something like that. I don't know, I'll put it in the description. But anywho, the original commenter responded and they were like, I don't just mean a place to go, I mean actual help. This kid needs actual help, not just a place to go. And then they said something about how it seems like this must just be like a cultural thing. And then the person, pretty much people just kept responding, talking junk, and they were like, okay, yes, this is a cultural issue. Because, of course, somebody tried to make it a racial issue pretty much. And like I always said, nobody cared about his situation because, one, people openly don't care about boys, and also he's a melanated boy. It was very obvious that most of the commenters were just racist chomos who were jealous because they felt like he was getting with Daisy and they wanted to get with Daisy. And yeah, like I always say, he got more hate for absolutely no reason than anybody has ever gotten who's ever walked on Soft Underbelly, even than like abusive parents and whoever else. And but yeah, that just reminds me of that. Cause crap, what was I saying? I guess pretty much just the no help thing. And then it's like, as I said before, due to ages and there aren't really any youth shelters. Like this one guy said in a video that I had shared and talked about a while. Well, this was definitely well over a year ago. A homeless youth outreach dude from the West Coast or something like that, or maybe Midwest. And he said that people always say homeless youth are just runaways just to make them go back home. Although you could technically say that about any homeless person, I guess, because generally homelessness is a family issue. It doesn't have anything to do with really any of the other stuff. Like this lady said in this post I had shared from the what's the channel called? Crap, hold up. Okay, it's called Journey with Us. This was still like weeks ago. She briefly mentioned in one video that she stays in Mauritius or something like that, and they've been there for years, and she was generally talking about Africa. And she said that homelessness really isn't an issue like that because they're not much of an individualistic society. And that's pretty much the whole thing. In fact, it was funny because the lady still didn't do anything to like really help me. But I remember when I was in Cali, I had met this Eritrean lady, and because the girl that she had took in, which I still think was a relative, but anywho, the girl she took in had introduced me to her, which she was calling her grandma or something like that. But anywho, to get to the point, I remember she had even told me that it's sad that I'm even like out there running around like that, and that America is such an individualistic society, because if I was in Africa, somebody would have took me in a long time ago. And like I always said, I stuck out more. Well, like people told me, I stuck out like a sore thumb because I'm black, quote unquote. Because there's plenty of homeless kids, 14 and younger, running around there. But I guess people just pretend to not notice them, and they just like would always make it a big deal that I was out there because they could tell I wasn't from there, quote unquote. But yeah, that's like the overall issue with that. And I would also say that like there's definitely a lot of laws put in place here as well to trap people in abuse situations. And people like like I remember when I was in New York, this dude was talking about how it was dangerous out there, not because of the traffickers or the Rev 29s, but because of the immigrants, because quote unquote, they drive down the wrong side of the street and they come from countries where there's no laws. And he was being mean to the Europeans and the Africans that were in the shelter. And he was like talking junk to these immigrant kids. One was, I guess, Ukrainian, and the other one was from I forgot what that place was called that they were letting in a lot of immigrants from. It was like, I don't know, I just know they're like really dark skinned. That's all I can really remember. I don't know if that's like a good description, but anywho, point is like one of the things that I've realized though is that it seems like there's a lot of upsides to being in a place with less like really supposedly strict laws that are made by a bunch of sick Freemasons, to be honest. Like, for example, I mentioned before, people going to other countries to help homeless kids while pretending that the same issues don't exist in America. But then also one of the things with it, and one of the excuses that people can bring up is that well, I can't legally help somebody else's kid because then I can get accused of something or charged with this or charged with that. If they're under 18, I can get accused of harboring a minor. There's even laws being passed currently where you can't feed homeless in general. I know people are talking about that in Arizona, how it's illegal to feed homeless people, and those laws are going to get worse and worse as Babylon continues to go into its little beast system. But anywho, well, it's beast system regime, I meant to say. Oh yeah, crap, I forgot to finish though. So going back to the whole thing with the homeless youth outreach dude, because I don't think I ever finished that sentence. I don't know if that's before or after I had to like go do something, but anywho. Anyways, like the guy was saying, people say homeless youth are just runaways, so make them go back home. And then he talked about how there's no negotiating a kid back to going back home to get raped and stuff, because one of the things about homelessness is that um, you have freedom over your environment, and hopefully, if anything goes left, you can just up and leave. You don't have that when you're locked in a building being abused, pretty much. And then he talked about how what people really need is families, and how homeless youth will train, hop, and hitchhike and travel all around the world to look for love and a family. And one of the things about life is that you don't end up getting that, but I'm not even going to go into that. So, anywho, the point of me saying all this is that going back to that post, there needs to be actual youth resource centers, but I know that it's probably never going to happen. There needs to be like youth shelters, and then like people shouldn't have to find some way to scrape up money to sneak all the way to the West Coast to go to a youth resource center or a youth shelter either, especially like Oregon and Washington, because those are the main places that have them. And then they still want ID, mainly to really try to make sure you're not older than you say you are, but then it's still bullcrap because it's like there needs to be some for people that are under 16, but there needs to be some for people that are actually really running from situations to where they're a missing person. I mean, crap, people even get kicked out and get reported missing just as blackmail. Like, you should be able to go regardless. Like, they always talk about how, even going back to the whole thing, why people will go to other countries to help people that are in the same situations that people in America are in. And really, they're not even helping people. They're missionaries going to traffic people and molest people. But anywho, harboring a minor, harboring a runaway, stuff like that. There needs to be like youth shelters and actual real quote unquote help, as people love to run around saying, that can actually really help people who really need help, because the people that need help the most are the people that have abusers that are doing their all to make sure they can't get help by threatening to press charges on people that they think are helping. Like, I still remember the whole situation when someone from a support group on Reddit had reported my situation as a last-ditch effort before I tried to escape. And that was the whole thing where 2/17/22 the social worker came, and then by 2/23/22 they snitched about the 1,950 plus abuse evidence videos and got some deleted. And so anyways, I remember my mom was talking about reporting the school and pressing charges on and reporting the therapist, and she threatened them and told them that they had to stop talking to me, which I wasn't even made aware of till not the social worker, till the therapist had actually let me know that they were told to stop talking to me weeks ago. And she was like, I guess you don't know this because I see that you're still texting me. Which, of course, realistically, it was actually their job as the fake mandated reporter lied to report, but they didn't. They're not going to help you. Their job is to help abuse you, or to abuse you themselves, or both. They get paid to help your abusers push whatever abuse stuff that they're doing to you, pretty much. As I've always talked about, mandated reporters are cash for kids system staff and human cash cow system staff. And to be truthfully honest, sometimes they're so focused on abusing you themselves, they'll try to keep you from having access to anybody that you could talk to because they're worried about you reporting them. So they'll keep you from being able to try to get the help that doesn't exist for your own abuse with your relatives or whatever, to try to make sure you don't report them because they're abusing you too on their own side agenda and their own side quest. And so, anywho, it also makes me think back to this. I remember when I was in Oregon and I found my first youth shelter. I didn't even know that they really existed. I didn't really believe it. This was last year. And And oh yeah, I met this one dude. He had came there all the way from around near New York, and had somehow got all the way to Oregon to go stay at a youth shelter, and then it's only overnight, so you can only be there for like from 8 p.m. Um, in fact, it was somewhere from 8 to 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., which, to be truthfully honest, I feel like that's also really unsafe. That there are no well, no, there were some other youth resource centers that people could go to sit during the day, but that's why people had the term roam time in the homeless community. I forgot about this. That's pretty much the time where you're literally just walking around all day waiting for the resource centers to open. And I feel like especially waiting until 8 p.m. to go lay down and 10 p.m. and stuff like that, it gives you a lot of time to just be outside in the danger that people love to talk about and fearmonger you about, to try to convince you to not run away. Or if you're kicked out, they try to fearmonger you to work stuff out, to try to beg to go back home and stuff like that. And it's like people talk about the danger that's supposedly out there, and they fearmonger you with what ifs and the fear of the unknown, but they're not going to do anything to protect you from that. And realistically, it's really just fearmongering you because of ageism, to try to get you back where people feel like you belong, which is back with some abusive guardian. And then it also shows, as I always say, how much people are unaware of the realities of a foster kid, because people are always looking to accuse you of getting kicked out or to talk junk about you for running away / escaping abuse. But people don't even think about the fact that majority of the homeless people and street kids are foster kids that have nowhere to go anyways. Not that people should be forcing anyone back into abusive households either. And then people are also forcing people back with pimps as well. But anywho, another thing about that is that, as I've said before, the reason these youth programs on the West Coast were originally made was for foster kids, actually, not even really for runaways and kicked out people, because foster kids are unaccompanied homeless youth, literally. And what they started doing is they started being open to all homeless youth, mainly 16 to 25 or 26, but sometimes younger. But it's like there needs to be more than that. And like I gave the example with the kid from New York, people shouldn't have to find some way to scrape up money to sneak and travel all the way to the West Coast to hope that there's a bed at a youth resource center. There needs to be more than that. I'm not even talking about Covenant House, because I know there's a couple of those in different states, but that's really iffy, and their age range is really iffy. And getting in there is also, it's honestly kind of hard. And it was something else with that I can't even remember. But there's a lot of stuff that I could say with that. With the whole Covenant House thing, to be honest. But anywho, there needs to be more youth resource centers and shelters. I even remember back when I was in Alabama. Well, I'm not even gonna go back and all of that, but generally, especially at these religious homeless places for grown people, it's even the staff for sex preds. And just like with group homes that are part of the foster care system, not only are these places in and of itself trafficking like CPS is, but also pimps and just people that are looking for somebody to have sex with. They're always going to these places and driving around at all times of the day looking for people that they feel are vulnerable to try to lure in with sex. It even reminds me of when I was on Reddit, and there was some guy that had made this post, and he was in one of the homeless subs, and he was like, I'll cash app you $1 if you can send me a DP. And then people were in the comments saying, well, I need $1, I need something to eat and all that stuff. And that's really how it is. There's just pimps and traffickers who are allowed to just drive around group homes and homeless shelters looking for victims that are often never seen again at that. And like that girl said in that one video, or well, a couple of videos I made, where she was talking about how she had run away from a group home, and the group home staff and all those people didn't care, and she thought that strangers would care. Which, yeah, that is something that you have beat into your head when you're in an abuse situation, that like the cash for care system staff don't care, your abusers obviously don't care, like your abusive family doesn't care, the police don't care, but if you run out into the world, you'll find somebody out there that'll magically fairy godmotherly care. And honestly, that's not true either. And that even goes into how there needs to be more harm reduction of people that are actually telling the real truth. But nobody wants to tell the truth because it makes everybody feel like the bad guy. When you say that nobody gives a crap about anybody, it makes people mad because it makes everybody feel guilty. And that's the funny thing about it. And it's interesting though, because people will covertly admit this. Because I remember, especially when I was 16, I was always getting accused of being a prostitute. And of course, still to this day. And people always say things like, well, if you're not a prostitute, then how have you been surviving and eating all this time? And it's like, if I say nobody gives a crap about anybody, you'll say that I'm the bad guy and I'm just screwed up in the head and mentally ill and retarded and I just don't trust people and all that bull crap. But you're actually admitting that you feel like people are worse than I even feel, because you're saying that you feel like there's no possible way that I've been able to survive this long and get water and use the bathroom and get something to eat without being raped and molested every day for years. You're saying that, so you're pretty much admitting that, although I will say that that's kind of a stretch. I mean, it can depend on where you're at. Like if you're in San Francisco or something, or where there's like a lot of homeless hate, or Cali in general, I mean, yeah, probably maybe you would eventually have to do some like mess to really get by. But generally, I don't think it's really that bad, at least yet, to where like there's no other option and you can't get a cup of water without like having to jerk somebody off or something. But it's funny that people will say things like that, but then will try to make me feel bad. But I mean, as I always say, if the shoe fits, or however the saying goes, or I guess like Bob Marley says, if the cat fits, let him wear it. But anywho, what else could I say with that whole thing? Oh yeah, then for the sex pred screenshots, which I'm gonna put in all of them, including the whole Chomo Shane dude. I talked about that situation a lot because when I first came here, which apparently was a year ago, there was that whole thing where like this dude who was in love with me and his own kids and his co-workers was getting the police to help him sexually harass me. And so anywho, he'll be in there and then some other people. And so with the first screenshot of the post that a lady made about this dude, I don't think I screenshotted any comments to it, but she was saying that people are saying he was just mentally ill and she needs to stop and that she's lying. All the people that are saying that she's lying, they're the other sex pred chomo guys, and then all the chomo sex pred male centered women, because people like to always make women these like bystander victims or like these enablers, especially in DV situations, but they aren't, and they get away with everything that they do. And so anywho, what was the other thing with that? Oh yeah, but the mentally ill bull crap, I already don't even like the whole thing of this mentally ill stuff because of how it's always used to gaslight and frame abuse victims. But there's so many other issues with it. And one of the big issues with it is people playing this game where they like to say that sex preds are just mentally ill. And it's like, well, I guess half everybody around is mentally ill because half everybody's attracted to kids and they're serial chomos and rapists. But that's not even what mental illness is. And these are the types of people that are giving people DID and making people schizo by giving them SA trauma. And so, anywho, another thing with this is that this is one of the many dudes that are always running around touching and harassing and stalking and all types of stuff to people. And it even makes me think back to the whole thing with that girl, which I'm kind of gonna, I guess, mention again in my video that's gonna be titled I'm Not Missing Out. It may have like an alternate title. But anywho, having that boy tell me that girl's actually been getting followed by this one dude for over 4 years made the whole situation even scarier. And one of the things about it is that this guy and other people are always doing stuff to everybody. Even like like this lady said to me in this convo with this one preacher lady or whatever she is. What did she say? Oh yeah, the same guys that are doing stuff to me are doing stuff to other people. And of course that's 100% true. They're even doing stuff to people that aren't like homeless, but they're just quote unquote scared to tell their parents. And that even goes into the whole thing of people pleasing, codependency, fine response. And yeah, there's a lot that I could say about that. But I do feel like, though, generally, I feel like if somebody really is scared to tell their parents, typically, I mean, maybe they were just really raised or just really convinced that they're this nice person, this fake nice person by being a people pleaser and having fine response. But generally, typically, they know that their parents really wouldn't care. They feel like their parents are so busy with other stuff, they don't want to, like, scare them. But it's just, like, I guess to get to the point, most people don't have anybody to tell, and they know nobody gives a crap about them, and they're vulnerable because nobody cares about them. And then there are the people that really are scared to tell their parents for whatever reason, but I still feel like typically it's because they know their parent wouldn't care, their parent's abusive anyways, and it would just like make them, their parent would just blame them. And or don't remember what else I was going to say with that actually. So I'm trying to think about what else to say. Okay, so another screenshot. Schizophrenia didn't exist until around the time that the military rolled out radar and some radio something. That was an interesting thing I saw, which I guess I can throw this in here with the just going along with the whole thing of how like abuse victims are the ones that are going to get labeled off as schizo. And generally, I mean, there definitely are differences, especially if the person is and I'm not even going to lie. I do think, I don't even know if this has been recorded to be honest, but I do think that well, no, I think I should say some of that over because I don't think any of that recorded. So I said that the schizo screenshot thing, I feel like that somewhat is related because of the fact that like abuse victims always get labeled off as schizo, and generally a lot of them have DID, but I mean you can get either one from abuse. Like I even think back to that video that I made that I think is still up from really when I first started posting on here again, because I didn't really post that much in my earlier days of running because of one, things are like being able to charge my phone, having Wi-Fi, and then just the whole thing of laying low and the stress that all that had, that wait a minute, whatever in the world. And so anywho, there was this one Facebook group that that I was in because my mom used to be in there lying all the time. Parents of, I think it was called Parents of Children with Schizophrenia or something. And there was this one lady on there that made me really mad. And she was talking about how her 10 and 12-year-old were schizo, and I was like, why in the world would your 10 and 12-year-old be schizophrenic? Did somebody essay them or something? And then she actually admitted that yeah, she was letting her boyfriend essay them from the time that they were literally born, from newborns on up. And then a little while ago he left and got with some other girlfriend to go abuse her kids. And it's like, so you let them get tortured and terrorized, and now you're playing Munchausen and Mom on the internet, talking about how they're schizo. And honestly, they definitely have DID, being abused from the time of a newborn on up. But anyhow, I don't even really remember what I was saying with that the first time. But yeah, I'm trying to think about what else. Okay, so lastly, a lady's screenshot talking about the whole thing of running away. Pretty sure the whole video was a skit, but either way, it's just another person making these child abuse skits, keeping these stereotypes going of the whole Jezebelic black woman beating on the kids and all that stuff. So much I could say about that. And then the other two screenshots really just go into the whole thing of like how people who are in abuse situations will often run around begging for adoption from a young age on up, and it never happens. And then, as you see in this situation, they end up getting murdered. But because passing away is like really just like sugarcoating the whole thing. It kind of makes me think about the Gabriel Fernandez, I think that was his name, situation. And I don't want to make this a trauma dump, but it just makes me think about how from elementary on up, like, I've been thinking about this a lot. I remember I used to like, especially there was this one teacher I used to ask to adopt me, but no, this was actually the little 3 months of 6th grade, but I did do this even in elementary. But I would ask her to adopt me, but then there was also this whole thing where like these girls who were in 5th grade with me, because I mean that's where a lot of bad stuff happened, or really elementary in general. I was always sexually acting out. They were telling the gym teacher about that, so she just felt, I guess it just made her feel like I was just like the scary black kid, and I wanted to go to her house to like grape her or something. Because I was always asking her to adopt me, and she just told me that if I kept asking her to adopt me and to take me home with her, and if I kept begging her to save me, she was going to press charges on me. But I only went there for 3 months anyway before like I started going through the Cash for Kids system. And so that was a little bit of 6th grade. But other than that, I pretty much only went to elementary. And due to things like that, I would honestly say that was a good thing. It actually makes me think, going back to the first screenshot, people try to pretend that it's not a common situation for people to be in these abuse situations where they're not allowed to go to school, either due to being in the Cash for Kids system, being locked up, or being in these fake school placements where they're not getting quote unquote real educations, whatever that really means, or just generally not being able to go to school. But then it's like it also sometimes doesn't even matter that much, because if you are in school, you're going to be getting bullied and ostracized for your trauma symptoms by students and teachers. Then they're going to want to profit off of your abuse situation by getting you the bad black boy or bad boy with ADHD label, or different things like that, even worse labels, and then have you forced on amphetamines and other dangerous pharmaceuticals. And so pretty much you're either being isolated and abused, or you're being abused by your main abusers and other random people, because random people will take part, which goes into the whole thing that I say with not even just the human cash cow systems, but the fact that it's not even that everybody's out to get you. People are generally indifferent to your situation, but people don't mind playing enabler, flying monkey, Lucifer effect, bystander effect, and whatever else. And I'm trying to think about what else to say with that. Oh yeah, I was thinking about this as well. And certain types of abusers, which I guess it seems like most abusers are like Marine Kingdom agents these days. Like, one simple little thing can lead to a whole chaotic thing. Like, just the whole situation of her and her mom getting into an argument about her mom sabotaging her and not wanting to enroll her in school. And then the boyfriend tries to jump in to play save a hoe for the mom in a situation she doesn't need saving from. And then all of a sudden now he's talking about shooting the little girl. And it's like, I don't even know where to stop recording at. So I'm just gonna start over to where I think it left off. I was talking about the whole thing of Jezebelic abusers, and the whole thing of how simple disagreement that really didn't even need to be a disagreement can happen, and then all of a sudden your abusive parent, especially with like the boyfriends, that now they want to shoot you. And this is a big thing with what I like to call the DL and even Chomo, a feminine thug persona, of the guys who are under the baby boy programming in the fake thuggy priest Freemason cult programming, where they walk around with their butt out and all that stuff, which is a part of buck breaking / vagovasal generational trauma as well. And so, anywho, they're obsessed with GUNs, which also is even just a Southern thing. Even like higher level Caucasians say, quote unquote Black American culture is generally learned from poor white people, but there's some truth to that. I would say generally it's a lot of how I think about it is like in religion they talk about how Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and that's just like how it is with the Rev 29 colonizers, and that's what the thuggy priesthood culture is all about, other than like the family trauma side. And so anywho, yeah, so just like in the South in general, people always running around talking about Bibles, guns, and Jesus, but yeah, a simple situation like that can really lead to a homicide. And then, of course, they mentioned that he went outside. And, of course, in these situations, the neighbors always know. Like, very rarely will there even be a neighbor who cares enough to call the police when there's, like, the kids that are always getting beat on all day long and all you hear is screaming and crying and yelling and belts and gunshots all day long coming from the house. Very rarely will there even be a neighbor who's willing to call the police for situations like that. Like, crap. I know I used to have a video that just went into detail on a lot of situations that even goes into the whole thing of how everybody's raised to lack empathy and sympathy and to be what people love to run around talking about psychopaths and these stupid psych labels that are bullcrap, but everybody's raised to really be that. I know I used to have a video about different situations where like pretty much even if somebody's house was burning down, I wasn't allowed to call the police. And so anywho, it even makes me think about how we had this one neighbor that would like bang on the wall whenever she was having seizures in hopes that somebody would call the ambulance. And I personally never heard anything, but my mom had once said that after the lady had told her that she was having seizures, my mom had told me that she'd never called the police and didn't care because she thought the lady was just getting beat on by her boyfriend. So yeah. And I'm trying to think what else to say. Oh yeah, so like, of course, in every abuse situation, everybody always knows, but people don't care. And then also the thing is that most people get abused anyways, so it's just kind of like it's just too okayed. And then people are like, well, I mean, it happened to me. But and then it's funny because if you talk about the fact that most people get abused, people will say that that's not true. But if you say, why don't people care, people will say everybody goes through it. So generally, as I always say, we're all alchemists. Everything is about manipulation. We're all Satan's children pretty much, and we are the devil that everybody talks about. Well, I guess since I gotta walk to go get on the bus, I can record this now. So, here are the things that I can remember right now, but I know I forgot to mention in the video, and I can edit this last part of the audio on. So, 1. I noticed the comment where somebody said that they're about to become a mom or something, and they had left this stupid, obviously checkable false comment saying you don't get charged for running away. For one, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm surprised that the police even admitted this to the person, because typically people do pretend that you don't get charged and even thrown in jail or even a mental facility or both for running away or even getting kicked out until you're eventually sent back to whatever abuse situation you escaped or got kicked out of. Like, I remember when I was in Cali, and one of the people that called the police, the police actually admitted that it would be better if supposedly I had to turn myself into them myself, but that's not true at all. They could kidnap me if they really wanted to, but he admitted that the only thing that they would do is put me in jail till 18 anyways, which that's not even really true. Really what they would have to do is figure out who I am, and they would have had to like send me back home, quote unquote. But I was surprised that the police had even admitted it to that dude back in Cali, because most won't. You're actually lucky if they know your situation and they just let you be. Because, like, there are some people that say I've ran into nice cops when I was kicked out and I ran away and they didn't, like, lock me up. They either, honestly, more than likely, they really just didn't know that the person was under 18 if they were. But maybe some of them were nice. But anywho, to get back to the point, crap, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, but people, it's just annoying when people say that. One, I'm pretty sure you could easily Google that and Google would tell you otherwise. Maybe, maybe not. I know when I used to talk about this stuff more so when I was like a lot younger, especially elementary age, people would still say things like, well, Google isn't accurate. But people don't really say that much anymore, so a quick Google search could have said otherwise. It's really annoying how when people talk about these situations, there's always people that love to do the whole there's help thing, which I've even talked about a lot recently, and I'm going to make another video about how even once you escape your abuse and save yourself, people just, for one, they just see it as you actively doing something wrong just because of people's ideas of what quote unquote homelessness is, or just because it's their idea of rock bottom. And it seems like you can never get a break in general from people in this fake help stuff. And it's funny because when you beg for help, people will often admit that there is none or it's not really anyone's job to do that. But then when you're saving yourself and you've accepted there is no help, then people are chasing around talking about help, which, as I always say, it's so ironic because when you're in the abuse situation, nobody wants to do that. But once you save yourself and you run away, then all of a sudden you have people coming out the woodworks talking about how you're not safe out here and you need help all of a sudden, which they're still not going to give you any. But still, the point is there. And then another thing I saw was a lot of people saying get her emancipated. For one, that's easier said than done. You can't just get somebody emancipated. If that was the case, everybody would be doing it. In fact, that's actually the loophole a lot of people get stuck in, trying to figure out how to do that, how to scrape up money for that, how to get a lawyer, how to get a judge, how to even get a case started. A lot of people get stuck in that before the whole scenario plays out of them having to run away or getting kicked out. But especially having to run away. Crap, a lot of people even get stuck in the loophole of trying to get emancipated after getting kicked out, without being a missing person. So it's not like somebody pretending that they're looking for the kid and that they want them back. And the court still won't let them do it, which keeps them stuck in a situation where they can't do anything, they can't get a job. You're lucky if you can get somebody to rent to you under 25. So trying to get somebody to rent to you as an emancipated person under 18, that doesn't typically really play out like that. Really, the thing of emancipation is trying to get emancipated so you can go live with a safe or hopefully safe person that you found that is typically a relative. I know a lot of foster kids are sometimes actually helped by like a case, their social worker to get emancipated sometimes, because the fact that they're like being honest about the fact that the kid really has nowhere to go anyway. So like foster kids are typically homeless, like living outside multiple times even before 18 anyways. Not that there's much of a difference between being thrown out on the streets as an 18-year-old kid or 16, but just like generally for foster kids, a lot of times police won't care because they know that they really have nowhere to go. But that depends on if they're in a place where like people admit that that's an issue and that youth homelessness is an issue because of CPS especially. But still, just the one difference with being 18 plus is just that you're not supposed to be locked up and then sent home. But that's barely even true because being homeless is illegal in general. So, and plus you're like at even more risk of just getting scraped up by ICE or the National Guard now for that. which all that's about to get worse. And you'll be on a slave camp because you got kicked out for a night and that made you quote unquote homeless, and now you're on a slave camp somewhere for being a quote unquote bum. In fact, I even had this boy telling me that with the fact the National Guard's supposed to come out, is running, if you're kicked out, you can't really help it, but is running away even worth it? And it's like, that's the only option that's been presented to people. But anywho, because I'm kind of going somewhere else. I'm trying to think about what else I saw. The weird comment where somebody said it sounds like she's choosing the situation. There's literally laws put in place to keep people in abuse, especially from parents. So, I mean, running away is the only option, but you gotta actually know how to, like, well, I wouldn't even say you have to know how to do it. You have to, one, hope you're not going to be looked for, which I'm assuming that 99.9% out of 10, however in the world the saying goes, she's quote unquote black, so that's one good thing, because that means she's most likely not going to be looked for. Sometimes if you're 14 or younger, the FBI automatically get involved, but that's more so if it's like a known fact or it's really suspected that somebody actually like came to your house and took you or something like that. But other than that, they're probably still not going to look. The one thing is really about actually being willing to camp and lay low till 18, and then also having money to get out the state. But I wasn't able to leave a comment. The comments looked like they were off, but some people were able to comment somehow, which that's when I got those other screenshots of the comments like a day later or so. I don't know if it's because they've been in the group longer, but honestly, I really don't like Facebook groups. I feel like I thought that they were going to be like an alternative to getting banned from Reddit all the time, but they're really not. Like, you have to get approved to even post or comment. In most Facebook groups, you're lucky if they're not like doing heavy moderation to where you can't say anything or post anything. But yeah. But I would still say that honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that they would be running here, if they do like have to run, this would be a good place to lay low. Because like I've said, like since people here just automatically age people up and they just claim you're secretly 38 and stuff, I feel like this would be a good place to lay low, other than like going to Cali where they can use the excuse to try to get the homeless quote unquote black kid out their town that they think you're supposedly 9 and 12 and different stuff that people said to me, which is all bullcrap. But and then of course when I tried to ride the bus because someone told me to just say I go to like the high school. I told them that wasn't gonna work because one, people can already tell I'm not from there because I'm quote unquote black, like I was always being told. And then when I had tried to ride the bus free, when I was told about where I could go to try to shower and get something to eat and stuff, of course the bus driver, this one Mexican dude, said that I was probably secretly 32. That's the only time I was ever accused of something like that, though. Other than since being back in the South, but generally, I never got accused of stuff like that anywhere else. But as I always say, it's always weird that people will pretend that youth homelessness doesn't exist, though, when you have situations like other ones I've talked about from the group that are already well-known common situations, especially for girls, that people are getting kicked out for being pregnant, typically by the mom's boyfriend or some other relative. It's just really interesting. Then with the fact that we live in an individualistic society where it's kind of expected to be kicked out somewhere from 14 to 18, it makes it even more weird that people will like play games with somebody about the status of their quote-unquote homelessness and whether they're lying or not or secretly older, when it's kind of sometimes expected for you to be like thrown out somewhere. But there's definitely something I'm forgetting. Okay, so one thing I do know that I'm forgetting is that from the looks of it, the post was made by like what seems to be some grown person that is like looking for advice for them. So that's like a good thing that they like have someone who hopefully won't disappear in the wind when things get hard, or like when if the mom threatens to like accuse somebody something to get them charged for trying to help. And it's just a good thing to have instead of just having a whole bunch of people around that are all full-blown enablers or flying monkeys, and they're all gaslighting you about your abuse and telling you that it's not happening, or just saying it's your fault. And that's just what happens to kids as the typical situation goes. Oh yeah, I remember what the other thing was. So somebody made a comment about some program called Let Them Live, but that's the thing. That's like a pro-birth program, not pro-life, because pro-life people really aren't pro-life, they're just pro-birth. And that's like for pregnant, like older people. That's not really something that would be, that's not something, a place that would be willing to help like an abused kid, especially in a situation where they're being abused by like a parent. That's for, I mean, pretty much just for like, to try to keep women from like taking out their babies, but that's not for that type of situation. I mean, maybe they'd help with like her taking care of the baby after the fact, but then again, by the time she'd be old enough to just leave, the baby would have been born by then. So I don't know. And then it was something else. Crap. It was something else though that I'm forgetting. Oh yeah, then all the other comments. People talking about different like domestic violence type places. Those are not for people, for one, they're only for females, but they're only for much older women who are like being abused by their boyfriends. And then a lot of them claim that you can only even go there if you were taken there by police, which is really bullcrappy because I've never heard of police even caring enough to transport a woman in a DV situation to a woman's shelter. And that's the weird thing about it. A lot of them say that. They say, well, to actually qualify to be here, you have to be transported here by the police after the whole domestic violence situation takes place. And it's like, since when do the police care enough to remove a woman from the home? But anywho, that's kind of besides the point. The overall point is that that's not for people being abused by parents, whether they're 18 plus or not. In fact, I remember I seen this one post from a guy on Reddit once. I can't remember what group, but he was like, he wishes that like he would have like went to a domestic violence shelter sooner after running away or getting kicked out or something like that. And I was just, I mean, I don't even think I was able to leave a comment because I think that I was like already like kind of shadow banned or whatever it's called. But that's not how that works at all. One, he automatically wouldn't qualify because he's a male. Those aren't for males, they're all sexist. In fact, some of them, in some places, I heard that like you can't even have a son in there if he's like 12 or older or 10 or older or something like that. So that's already bullcrap. And then it's like, there's just obvious mess with that, which even goes into the whole thing of like ageism and sexism and how nobody cares about males, but then people like to merge together boys and men and all that stuff, which actually can go into a screenshot that I'm going to make a video about eventually, where somebody was like saying that this boy is going to become a psychopath because he witnessed his dad, who was a chomo, unalive his mom for outing him after the divorce or during the divorce, which is actually a viral thing. I had found it because I seen a comment about it. Somebody was talking about the whole situation, and I had found like one of the ladies' videos where she was like talking about the whole thing with her husband. And I just feel like that's obviously a sexist comment where they just feel like males are bound to like end up that way. Because it's like, I mean, if you're going to accuse a traumatized kid of like, for one, that wouldn't even be a quote unquote psychopath with these stupid psych labels. Because technically, the way the saying goes is that psychopaths are born, sociopaths are made. And it's like, if you're going to accuse the traumatized male of being that, then I mean, you could claim that the kid that the husband essayed is going to become a quote unquote psychopath too then. So, and that wouldn't be good to assume, but I mean, crap, even if somebody did become a quote-unquote sociopath, typically, I don't even remember what I was saying. Oh, crap, hold up. Okay, I think I was about to say, typically, as I've said before, after I seen this pointed out once, people that would be considered a sociopath or antisocial personality disorder by psychiatry are typically people that see the issues in society and believe in justice. So, for example, they consider people like Batman a sociopath. And then also, another side is like people who have their own off-grid homesteads where like they homestead somewhere where like there's no away from the city supposedly, and they're not like doing mainstream matrix functional society stuff. They're considered antisocial, which really means anti-society. So the people that are really going to get that label versus what people typically try to make it mean are two different things. I mean, it's definitely, I do know that like people assume that's like a label for supposed serial unalivers, which that's not even true because those people are like MK Ultra program created by the government, the serial unalivers that are pushed like by Netflix and stuff. But it's all just bullcrap, and at the end of the day, we're all reflections of each other. So somebody can only become a quote unquote psycho or sociopath and these other stupid labels because we made them that way, because we are that way. We're all reflections of each other. So somebody's only as sociopathic or psychopathic as the people that made them that way. So it doesn't really matter in the end when people throw around those like terms and accusations. And then I don't even know what else to say with that. Due to ageism and parent worship, DV shelters they're not for people getting abused by parents or family or any type of guardian. They're just for women who like are supposed to be trying to get away from a boyfriend, and that's pretty much it. And then, oh yeah, then I can also throw in the thing that I should have said first, which people should already know. You can't even go to a shelter or any of these programs under 18 anyways, which is why there needs to be more youth programs in general for people, I would say really of any age under 18, up to like 26 or maybe even older. They could be separated programs, but still. Because like the few youth resources that do exist in the U.S., as I always talk about, are in the West Coast, but then they're only for people 16 to 24. But it should be younger than 16 because I mean, at the end of the day, in the places where there are like a lot of homeless youth, I mean, they're way younger than 16 as well. I think they just say 16 because generally 14 to 16 is one of the young adult ages, even though that's not really that recognized anymore, especially in America. But yeah, I think that was everything. Oh yeah, and then the harbor and the runaway charge that the police mentioned. I'm actually surprised that the police even mentioned that. And then people saying that the police should have been called. It just shows that a lot of people didn't seem to have read the post, which is interesting because I don't even think it was that long, but like, and then it's funny because like if a kid was to say that they like called the police during a situation like that, somebody would say that they're lying because the police have to do something about a GUN being pulled on you, especially by the mom's boyfriend. But that's not true. In fact, police will often tell people that it's not even their job to help in child abuse situations or family issues, that you need to call CPS about that, and it's not even their job. And then people will be like, well, you're lying because it's a crime to abuse kids. No, it's really not. But they'll be like, when a crime is committed, it's always the police's job to do something. Their job isn't to do anything but make a situation worse, and that's something that a lot of people say. And then I think maybe that was it. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh yeah, the last thing I could say, I bet those Freemason police officers probably walked away with a smile on their face and trying not to burst out laughing. with just allowing the whole situation to go down like that. And then saying that there's nothing they can do because the mom doesn't want the boyfriend to leave. And then that's the thing as well, them trying to make it seem like the boyfriend is the issue and the abuser, not the mom. And the mom's a paraphiliac, on the Choma paraphilium spectrum branch anyways, because it's like people are saying the math wasn't working out because how's the mom 26? And like I had said, and I noticed that people had pointed out in the comments the next day, the boyfriend's 26, not the mom, because of course that math wouldn't even work out. So I wouldn't be surprised if the mom is like 40 or 50 something. Maybe 30 something, to be honest, because that could work too, I think. But she'd have to be older than 32. But then I wouldn't even be surprised if the daughter's pregnant by the boyfriend at that. And so then I think that's it.